And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into today's recap of Pistons versus the Houston Rockets, you might be wondering, man, that sweatshirt is pretty fire. I wonder if I can order that. Well, I can answer that for you, and that answer is yes, you can get this sweatshirt. It is for sale through Grind Clothing Co. So you can find a link to that in the description below or in our YouTube bio. And also go make sure to follow Grind Clothing Co. on Instagram. They are our first partnership, our first collab, and we are very happy to be partnering up with them. So these sweatshirts that me and Ryan are wearing in today's recap are for sale. And we also have other sweatshirt templates and hat for sale. And I think now we have stickers. So make
Yep.
sure to go also check out our stickers because you always got to revved up 906. So make sure that you go and support your boys and rep some revved up 906 merch. Without further ado, let's get into today's recap of Pistons versus the Houston Rockets. Tonight's final score was 115 to 121 in the Houston Rockets' favor. Tonight's game wasn't a typical loss. This game had its ups and downs. It was a fun game overall to watch in our favor and sometimes not in our favor. We saw guys like Jalen Green go out and get 32 points tonight. His final stat line was 10 of 18 shooting, very efficient on 36 minutes, 5 assists, only 4 personal fouls. Why? At the beginning of the game, I actually talked about it on the sports show on the radio. I really thought Jaden Ivey was going to match up very well with Jalen Green. Jaden has really found a rhythm defensively and offensively, but we could not find an answer tonight for Jalen Green.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is how they game planned for us because Jalen Green and Jaden Ivey are pretty similar in their builds in the sense that they're both really explosive. And I would say Jaden Ivey is much faster than Jalen Green, but Jalen Green matches the explosiveness with like just his ability to get up and everything. But uh, Jalen Green is a better shooter. I will say that. And not that Jaden Ivey couldn't be better or could be as good someday. I'm not saying that because Jaden Ivey, in his own sense, can shoot the ball. He's not like a bum, but
Right.
Jalen Green is more of a shooter who's a freak of an athlete.
Right.
And Jaden Ivey is just a freak of an athlete as of right now. Not saying that he couldn't be a shooter because I think he can be, but that's what I think the difference is between the two. And then Jaden Ivey, historically speaking, has been a little shaky on defense. Where like tonight he had 5 fouls, the other night he had 6, and so it's
Mhm.
like he needs to find out or figure out how to not foul as much because then he can stay guarding Jalen Green or stay in the game much longer, and that would take away from like Jalen Green or others like Kevin Porter Jr. being as effective as they are.
We saw the Pistons go on a 13-2 run with 2 minutes left in the second quarter, and a big guy pushing for that momentum in the second quarter was Isaiah Livers. Tonight, he finished with 12 points, 3 of 6 from the 3-point line, 4 of 8 from the field in 28 minutes. We saw him against the Oklahoma City Thunder only get 21 minutes, 0 of 3, I believe, from the field. He kind of struggled. So it's really nice to see him. Yes, in all 4 quarters, he wasn't necessarily the biggest impact, but in that second quarter, proved that when the Pistons need some put offensive force, some push, Isaiah Livers can give that to you.
Yeah, and this is kind of foreshadowing what I think Isaiah Livers will be for us in the future if he does stay, is that he's going to be one of those bench guys that comes in clutch when when we need somebody to. Because I don't realistically, unless it's you're trying to go small ball, I don't see Isaiah Livers starting for us after this season necessarily, just because he's very cold sometimes. Like he's supposed to be one of the better shooters out there in the league, but yet time and time again he's 0 for 3, 0 for 6, and it's like, dude, you're supposed to be one of the best. You got to be
Right.
one of the best. You can't just expect that, oh, everything's gonna be fine. They want me here. It's cool. No, you got to go out there and perform every night. Tonight he did that, and it's not like, whoa, 12 points. It's more of like, oh, 12 points.
Yeah.
But I think for him to be effective, he needs to take on the role of I need to be the guy when the team is cold.
Yeah, he needs to be that bucket getter. You know, we talked a lot about earlier this season about how Bojan was that guy. The Pistons in years past have dealt with very cold streaks. You know, they could go 5 to 6 minutes without scoring. And guys like Bojan were able to fill that role. Well, Bojan's out with an injury. The next man up has to step up. And we're seeing it in small segments from Isaiah Livers, him be able to get buckets, just not on a consistent level yet. So it'll be really nice to see, hopefully, him get some consistency in these last 4 games. We saw Jaden Ivey able to get a buzzer beater ending the first quarter to be able to pull it within 3. So the Pistons were only outscored by 3 points in the fourth. In the second quarter, the Pistons outscored the Rockets by 6. So we were able to make up some momentum. And then just outscored by 2 points in the third. And then the fourth quarter is really where the Rockets were able to get consistent buckets, and were able to go on some hot streaks against the Pistons. Pistons were outscored by 7 points in the fourth quarter, which isn't too crazy. Not necessarily like, whoa, it's not like we were outscored by 13, 15 points. But those 7 points were very crucial because this game was neck and neck the whole game. And when the Pistons are able, give up rather, back to back points the way they did against the Houston Rockets in the fourth quarter, you're going to be looking at a loss.
Yeah, and for me, the difference is if you look at our rosters, like if you compare the two, you look at the Pistons compared to the Rockets, we have a far better bench. We have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of vets. They don't really have a lot of vets other than Bojan. So I meant not Bojan, Boban. There we go. But they don't have a ton of vets over there. We have more vets than they do. But then you look at how skilled their starting five is, and granted, because of how young they are and how skilled they are together is just wow. And then you look at our starting five, and we have guys like Killian Hayes who are starting to finally come into who they are supposed to be, and James Wiseman's starting to finally come into place on where he's supposed to be. Bagley's streaky, but he's starting to come and be the guy that everybody expected him to be early on. And
Mm-hmm.
then Ivy is just still doing his thing. So it's like you look at our starting five and you look at their starting five and you're like, this is not me hating on the Pistons, but I would rather take their starting five just based off of how young and skilled they are and then their
Mm-hmm.
chemistry. Because that entire Rockets team, their chemistry is very high. Ours isn't. And we need to figure that out because you have all the we have all the weapons in the world to easily beat a team like Houston, to
Yeah.
easily beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, to easily beat the Orlando Magic and all these young teams. But we don't have the chemistry. And that's what really comes down to it. Because when you have guys in sync, how are you going to stop them?
Right, right. I totally agree. And, you know, one advantage the Houston Rockets have is they have their Cade Cunningham. You know, Jalen Green has been able to stay healthy this season in his sophomore year. And that makes it even more painful to lose to a team like the Houston Rockets with the history rather that we have against Houston from, you know, last year's battles between Cade and Jalen and the trash talk and the press conferences and the interviews talking about each other. So, you know, this a game like this is really when it stings the most not having Cade, because it's like if we had Cade or some of our injuries weren't as bad, like we didn't have so many injuries, I really do think we're beating a team like the Houston Rockets. But when you're given the cards that we were dealt, you know, this is what the game looks like. And, you know, we're like, oh man, Alfred Sanguin, he's a beast. Jalen Green's going off. Kevin Porter Jr. is looking like he might be the next Shea Gilgeous-Alexander-esque player. These guys, they got some athletic guys that know how to get buckets. I referenced Alfred Sanguin or Alprin, so on and so forth.
Alperen Sengun.
Alperen Sengun. I mentioned him. I called him when I was watching the game. I told my dad, I go, he's a baby Nikola Jokic. Like, I really think he's very that Nikola Jokic-esque player. Tonight, he finished with 15 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists on a 5 of 7 shooting in 34 minutes. This was a guy that made big plays when the Houston Rockets needed big plays.
Yeah, if you look at last year's stats for him compared to this year, he has stepped it up. Like last year, you're like, oh, okay. You see flashes, you're like, okay, he could be something. And then this year, it's like he's doing everything. And it's not like he's blowing up and having like 30 plus points a game. He doesn't need to do that to be effective, clearly, because you saw tonight, double, 7 assists. Like he's very efficient and he just knows how to make the right play. Now, Greg Kelser referenced this during the game tonight, saying that he was passing great in the beginning of the game, and then all of a sudden he starts turning the ball over. But that's because that's Sengun going, oh, okay. This is like, it's kind of like when shooters are happy, like the shooter happy thing, and how like you're just in a flow and you're hitting all your shots, and then it's like, okay, I can take this, and then you miss. That's kind of what he was doing tonight with the passing, because he's like getting the ball perfectly to these right areas, right timing and everything, and then all of a sudden, boom, he tries to do it again. It's like it's not going to happen that time. But outside of that, he still had a great game, and he's somebody that I wish we could actually have on our roster, because he's versatile in the sense that he doesn't have to go out there and demand the ball.
And I mean, it seemed like he wasn't really able to, like, watching it, you're like, oh, he can't get momentum together. But then at the end of the game, he has 11 points and 10 rebounds. I'm like, you know what? He made it look easy.
Yeah, he did. And I wish he would be back in the starting lineup. I can understand why he isn't. Just because he's still coming off that injury. They're still trying to watch him, keep an eye on him. But when Bagley is still going out there and getting 21 like he did tonight, and he's been on that hot streak, how are you supposed to take him out and put Duren back in? Because it's kind of like it just diminishes what you've accomplished so far. And that sending that message to Bagley going like, hey, you're playing great, but realistically, you're not our starter long term, so I'm sorry you have to be on the bench. Like that has to be the hardest conversation ever, because it's like Bagley's going out there tonight. He was very efficient, and he had 21 points in 34 minutes, and then he was 5 for 6 from the free throw line, which is actually really good for him. Like he had a very solid night offensively, and so it's like, how are you supposed to take him out and put Duren back in?
I know.
It's just that kind of call. But then I also will say, keep Bagley in there. Take Livers out. Give Duren those minutes again. Why not have Bagley at the 3? That could be interesting.
Whoa. Okay. Might have to clip that. I don't hate that.
Because Bagley, if you look at how he plays, he's kind of like a Sadiq-esque player, where if he just developed his shot more, why couldn't he play the 3?
Yeah, and we talked about in this week's episode 20, about how, if we drafted Victor Wembanyama, we could maybe see him at the 3 spot at 7'5". So it's not too crazy to say Bagley would go there then. Yeah. I mean, it's not too out of this realm. I wanted to talk about Eugene Omoruyi. 17 minutes, 11 points. This guy's proving that he can come off the bench and get you double-digit points. I've been really happy with Eugene's play. He didn't struggle with fouling tonight, only had 1 foul. His defense was a little questionable at times, but offensively, he's been playing great. And then, 3 of 7 from the field, 1 of 4 from the 3-point line. So you'd like to see him be a little bit more efficient from the 3-point line. He hasn't really been able to find momentum behind that line, but I was happy with his play tonight.
Yeah, he keeps showing time and time again that he can play and ball out, and I'm happy with that, because he does. this is like me going back to chemistry in the sense that I think once you gain the chemistry with the team, I think his defense is going to be perfectly fine. He's
Yeah.
just he's still new to the team because he had the two 10-day contracts of 20 days, and then now he's probably like 2, 3 games into his new contract. So that's a week or so. So it's like he's
Right.
barely been with the Pistons. So you can understand how his chemistry is lacking still.
Yeah.
Now you can see how effective he is outside of the defense and just how he hits the glass. Like he he put up a shot over Boban. Like and
Yeah.
Umarui is not even that big. And so he's going up against Boban and is just finishing around the rim and it's like, okay. I see you because like normally a guy that size isn't making that shot unless you're
Right.
one of the better players of all time. You're not hitting
Yeah.
that shot. So I'm just very pleased overall with how Amaru is playing. Like he doesn't need to have 20 plus minutes to be effective. Like just in
No,
17 minutes, he had double digit scoring. And then he
exactly.
also had 3 boards. Like I'm happy.
Now, some people watched tonight's game at Bally Sports. Some people just saw the final score on Instagram. Other people looked at the box score and were like, "Oh no." I am telling everybody right now, we're about to talk about James Wiseman, but don't be worried. We're going to talk about it. Everything's going to be okay with James. Okay. It's his birthday today. Happy 22nd birthday to James Wiseman. Don't give him too much of a hard time. He probably just, stayed up too late, playing video games or something last night. I don't know, but don't give him too hard of a time. Maybe he didn't sleep good in Houston. Okay. Maybe the plane ride was rough. Okay. Tonight from James Wiseman, 8 points, 4 of 10 shooting from the field, 0 of 2 from the 3 point line, 4 rebounds on 23 minutes, fouled out with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. James Wiseman is going to have nights like this sometimes. And when guys like Killian, yes, he finished with 6 assists. I understand. But with Bagley playing so well, Killian not giving James rather some love tonight. Like a game like this is going to happen here and there when I just don't think the Pistons are involving James Wiseman the way they should.
Yeah, but to that point, it's also like look at who he had to guard tonight
Yep.
because, or who was guarding him rather too. So the Rockets, Tari Eason, one of the better fours in the league, for being young. Then Alperen Sengun, one of the better young centers, and then Jabari Smith, one of
Yeah. Oh yeah.
the better young fours, and then Kenyon Martin Jr., one of the better young fours. So the fact that in those what one, two, those four guys, I, this is not me. Uh, okay, three of them out of the four, but this is not me giving James Wiseman a hard time. But three out of those four are more athletic than James Wiseman is, and they're more offensive. I guess you could say they're more offensively gifted than Wiseman is in the sense that uh, Jabari Smith, obviously, there's a reason why he got picked as high as he did
Right.
because he can play. So it's kind of hard to go up against a young guy like that who is a freak of an athlete too. And then Kenyon Martin Jr. is all over the place every night, no matter who he's playing against. And so how are you going to guard that? And then Sengun is again, we complimented him earlier. He's one of the most efficient bigs in the NBA. And
Yeah.
so how are you supposed to guard somebody like that? Because if you can't guard Jokic, how are you going to guard mini Jokic? And then Tari Eason, yeah, he only had the 5 points tonight, but he had 10 rebounds. 10.
Right.
And then it had an assist and 2 steals and a block. Like going up against that, if I'm James Wiseman, I can understand how James Wiseman might not have as good of a stat line tonight, given that like Tari Eason, yeah, he had a terrible shooting night, 1 of 11, but he had 10 boards, an assist, and 2 steals and a block. And then like Sangoon, the 15, 13, and 7. Kenyon
Yeah.
Martin, 15, 6, and 1. Jabari Smith, 13, 11, and 1. So it's like you can
Tough matchup.
understand how in any of those matchups out of four guys, you can understand how James Wiseman had the stat line he did tonight.
They're also very active. I mean, they kept James Wiseman, he kept him on his feet all 4 quarters. And that's the reason why each quarter he started to rack up those fouls. When you have a guy like Sanguine that's all over the place, we saw I believe he got a charge on Wiseman at one point,
Hmm.
something like that. So these guys are active guys. Sanguine is a very savvy player that seems like he's developed a knowledge on how to get people to foul him, which is a great move in today's NBA because especially when you're playing the Detroit Pistons, the refs are going to call everything. I mean, we've mentioned that before, but yeah, I mean, James Wiseman, I'm not worried about his play by any means. Tough matchup tonight against a bunch of active centers. It's going to happen here and there. Before we wrap up today's recap of Pistons versus the Rockets, I wanted to just highlight Jaden Ivey. I've been really happy with his play. Did we talk about Jaden Ivey already?
We kind of did, but not really.
Well, he had 34 points, against drawing a blank. He had 34 points 2 games ago, 24 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Tonight with 18. Not the most efficient 18, but 8 of 20 from the field, 2 of 9 from the 3-point line. And I've just really been happy with Jaden Ivey's play. His three has fallen a little bit better than it used to, and he's kind of finding tonight. It wasn't the most efficient game, but he's finding some consistency offensively.
Yeah, I'm happy that he's getting his shots, even though he's not efficient tonight. I'm happy he's getting those shots because typically when a Bojan would be playing, Ivy's not getting those same looks,
Yeah.
and that's what sucks when you have Bojan out there. I love him. He's one of my favorite Pistons to watch in a long time, just given his ability to score. But he takes away so many opportunities from others on this team that is refreshing to see Ivy, even though he was 8 of 20, which is terrible. Even though he was 8 of 20, he still was able to take 20 shots. Like, I'll
Yeah.
take that. And he was 2 of 9. He was still able to take 9 threes, which is a lot. And so I'm just happy that Ivy's starting to get some of these looks that he hadn't had gotten early on in the season because that helps grow him. That
Mhm.
helps show him, okay, maybe I shouldn't try and take that shot anymore. Oh, that shot was effective. I need to go back to that. And so it's just like this is a learning curve for him. And this is something he can take forward because when Bojan's back, he's not going to get these same opportunities to get 20 shots up. And so when Bojan's back, you got to be able to take the most effective, efficient shots you can, especially when you have Cade and everybody back too. So
Right.
it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with that, given that Ivy is growing and he, like even with 8 shots, he had the 18 points with the 2 threes also. Like that's a solid night. I'm not complaining. And
Right.
so he's still getting his bucket even if he's not efficient. And that's something you can look forward to is just that he's going to keep growing and he's going to keep maturing and getting that much better of a player. And even if he's not hitting a shot every night, he doesn't have to be effective.
Well, and in his good play in the absence of Bojan, Hope and Alec Burks, Hamidou Diallo, so on and so forth, these guys that take a lot of shots. Hopefully, it shows these guys, all right, Ivy's legit. We got to make sure we get him the ball. We understand he's one of the superstars of this team. We got to get him the ball. It's just the way the NBA works here and there. And hopefully, some of the teammates, some of these guys, can kind of accept their role and understand Cade, Jaden, Jalen are our main guys, and we need to do whatever it takes to get them the ball. That will do it for today's recap of Pistons versus the Houston Rockets. Tonight's final score was 115 to 121. Before you guys leave, make sure to like and subscribe. The Revved Up 906 community and podcast is always and continuing to grow. So be a part of this Revved Up Detroit Pistons movement. And we are excited to be a part of this community. And we will see you guys in the next Revved Up recap. Peace.